sense.
You are looking live at the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft attached to the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. This is the ticket home for NASA's Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexey Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner, with their landing in Kazakhstan scheduled about 7 hours and 20 minutes from now. Good afternoon from Mission Control in Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room as we begin our continuing coverage throughout the course of the day and the evening of the ride home for Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner. They will be coming home on that Soyuz spacecraft to wrap up a mission of more than 7 months in duration, a mission that will have spanned more than 3,500 orbits of the Earth and 93.3 million statute miles. Aboard the International Space Station, the crew is in the process of activating Soyuz systems. Everything is proceeding on track for an undocking that is scheduled at 4:57 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time, 5:57 and 30 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. That will begin the ride home for Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner, wrapping up their mission with their deorbit and landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan to the southeast of the remote town of Kazakhstan. About a 91-minute or 91-mile separation between Kazakhstan, the forward staging point for today's landing operations, and the landing site in the remote area of Kazakhstan. The landing is scheduled just after sunrise, Kazakhstan time, on Sunday, April 20th, Easter Sunday. That will be Don Pettit's 70th birthday.
SG-1 по тестовому видеосеансу.
Отвечаем, СГ-1.
На камеру выключать уже до закрытия люков.
Принято. Вопрос еще, Кость. 3, 4, 5 пункт по процедуре выполнять?
Нет, не надо.
No, we don't need to.
As mentioned a moment ago, Don Pettit, the NASA astronaut who is wrapping up his 4th flight into space, Alexey Ovchinin also completing his 4th flight into space, and Ivan Vagner wrapping up his 2nd flight into space. You are looking at the hatchway between the Rassvet module and the Soyuz MS-26. A short time from now, the crew members will gather in that small passageway. They will say goodbye to one another. The returning crew, that trio, will float aboard the Soyuz vehicle. The Rassvet hatch will be closed first, followed a few minutes later by the Soyuz hatch, and that will begin the final preparations as the crew that is coming back to Earth this evening will don their Russian Sokol launch and entry suits and begin the final procedures before the undocking later this afternoon. That undocking command to open up the hooks holding the Soyuz to the Rassvet module is scheduled about 3 hours and 52 minutes from now. Once again, the statistics associated with today's homecoming for Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner. They will be wrapping up a mission of 220 days in duration, 3,520 orbits of the Earth, a 93.3 million mile mission. This view from an external camera on the International Space Station as the station flies 260 miles over the South Atlantic. On the right side, that is the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. That is the ride home for Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner later today. To its left is the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft attached to the Prishal module, also on the Earth-facing side of the station. That was the vehicle that 11 days ago brought NASA's Johnny Kim and Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov and Alexey Zabritsky to the station for the start of their 8 months on board the International Outpost. With the completion of the mission today, Don Pettit again will have logged 220 days in space on this flight and a total of 590 days in space on his 4 missions. Alexey Ovchinin, just a bit ahead of Pettit on the all-time endurance list, with his 220 days in space on this, his 4th flight, will have totaled 595 days in space, and Ivan Vagner will have logged, of course, 220 days in space on this flight and 416 days in space on his 2 missions to the International Space Station. Here in Mission Control in Houston, the team that will be presiding over the undocking and landing of the Soyuz vehicle is beginning to pour into the flight control room. Today's operation will be overseen from the ISS standpoint by Flight Director Marcos Flores. He is currently joined on console by Flight Director Heidi Brewer. We will be also having a spacecraft communicator on console a bit later on, just prior to the undocking and landing phase of today's operation. The operation itself is controlled by the Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of Korolyov outside of Moscow. They are in charge of all of the operations associated with the Soyuz undocking and the entry and landing later this evening on the steppe of Kazakhstan. You will be hearing from time to time those Russian flight controllers referring to the Soyuz by Ovchinin's call sign of burlak. That is a Russian term for a riverboat or a barge puller that existed in the 17th century Russian Empire. Each Russian Soyuz commander selects his own call sign. In this case, the call sign for Soyuz MS-26 and Ovchinin and his crewmates is burlak.
0147J. I wrote it down.
Все, Вань, спасибо большое, принял доклад.
Copy, thank you very much. Ivan, we understand. It's Nabavakar, it's Belpa 48 618. It's in the area 407408 panel. What is on the cable?
По предыдущему твоему докладу,
you were reporting a number.
The journey of Don Pettit, Alexey Ovchinin, and Ivan Vagner began with the launch of their Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop a Soyuz 2.1A booster from launch site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan back on September 11th, 2024. As is typical, the booster lit up its engines, the turbo pumps came up to flight speed, the hold-down posts were released, and the Soyuz booster and the 3 crew members atop the 3rd stage of that Soyuz vehicle began their climb to orbit, arcing out to the northeast from Baikonur for an 8-minute, 46-second journey to their preliminary orbit. They arrived at the space station about 3 hours and 15 minutes after launch on a 2-orbit venture that began their stay aboard the International Space Station that will be coming to an end a short time from now. Again, a good look here at the Soyuz MS-26 attached to the Rassvet module, which is also known as MRM-1, the mini research module number 1 that is attached to the Earth-facing port of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The station is currently flying into an orbital sunset south of Africa, so we will be losing a good view of that Soyuz vehicle for the next several minutes until the International Space Station emerges back into an orbital sunrise. The target for the landing of Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner on the steppe of Kazakhstan this evening will be a remote area just about 91 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan in the staging city of Karaganda, Kazakhstan, which is to the northeast of the landing site. The NASA team of support personnel and the Russian Rosaviatsa search and recovery forces are making their way to the Karaganda airport. They will depart the airport in an Antonov 24 fixed-wing aircraft, as well as in Russian Mi-8 helicopters over the course of the next couple of hours to make their way to the landing site. The Antonov will make a stopover in Kazakhstan, where there are also helicopters that are waiting to bring some of the prime recovery team members to the landing site to pick up Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner. Their landing is scheduled just 56 minutes after sunrise on Sunday morning in Kazakhstan. A total of 3 fixed-wing aircraft, 8 helicopters, and 6 all-terrain vehicles are in play for this evening's landing operations. The 2 of the 8 Mi-8 helicopters are already positioned to the southwest at the Kryani Airport, which is near the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the launch site for Soyuz operations. Those Mi-8 helicopters would be in play in the unlikely event of a ballistic entry. That would be a steeper than expected entry because of an equipment problem that would bring the Soyuz to a landing some 400 kilometers or so short of their intended landing target later this evening. Although that is not expected to take place, they are always there as a precaution in the unlikely event they are needed to recover the crew. The demarcation point for the conclusion of Expedition 72 aboard the International Space Station and the beginning of Expedition 73 is always marked from Soyuz undocking to Soyuz undocking. So we're just about 3 hours and 45 minutes away from the beginning of a new expedition on board the International Space Station. That new expedition is led by Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi, who flew to the space station on the Crew 10 launch a few weeks ago. About 24 hours ago, he took over command of the International Space Station from Alexey Ovchinin. Let's take a look back at yesterday's change of command ceremony.
Добрый день. Сегодня 18 апреля 2025 года. Я космонавт Роскосмоса Алексей Овчинин. Передаю командование Международной космической станции Такуя Ониши. Хочу сказать несколько слов. Во-первых, хочу поблагодарить наш экипаж. Большое вам всем спасибо. Мы вместе работали, вместе отдыхали. У нас все было хорошо. Также хочу сказать большое спасибо всем людям, преподавателям, инструкторам, которые готовили нас к космическому полету, которые поддерживали нас, сопровождали во время космического полета. Также большое спасибо всем ЦУПам, ЦУПу Хьюстона, ЦУПу Хансвилла, Цукубы, Мюниха, Москвы. Большое спасибо за вашу помощь, за вашу поддержку. Ну и, конечно, большое спасибо нашим семьям, нашим детям, которые тоже нас поддерживали на протяжении всего полета. I want to say big thank you, my crew. We walk together, we relax together. Also, I want to say big thank you all people, instructors who prepared us, who supported us during our flight. Big thank you all MCCs, MCC Houston, Munich, Tsukuba, Huntsville, Moscow. Thank you very much for your help, for your support. And also big thank you our families, our children, their support help us during all our flight. Time to change command. This is a key from ISS. Now it's your key. Take care, our station. It's our everything.
Спасибо, Алексей. Я принимаю командование МКС. Вы продемонстрировали отличное лидерство. Спасибо за это. И помощь, и дружбу. Желаю вам мягкой посадки. Thank you very much, Alexey. It's a great honor for me to accept the command of the ISS. And I feel so special that I am taking over the command from you. It's because it's been almost 9 years since we met here in 2016 during Expedition 48. At that time, both of us were rookies, and here we are, two veterans who are ISS commanders. Human spaceflight is not easy. Only continuous dedication from generation to generation made it possible for human beings to get here. And now today we have 4 rookies, and I'm sure one day they will come back and become commanders. It's just like the passing the torch. And I believe that's how we will continue to develop human spaceflight. And now I'd like to say a couple of words in Japanese. 日本の皆さん応援本当にありがとうございます。本日2025年4月18日に国際宇宙ステーションの指揮権を継承してコマンダーに就任しました。今回このような大役をいただけたのもひとえに私の努力によるものではなく、これまで希望の運用ですとかコウノトリによる物資の補給といった日本の有人宇宙開発に対する貢献が国際社会の中で認められ、そしてまた未来に対して期待されている証だと思ってます。なのでその期待に応えられるよう全力で頑張っていきたいと思います。Then switch back to English. So Alexey, Ivan, and Don, thank you so much for accepting us so kindly when we arrived here. You guys have been showing us the ropes since then, and we had such a great time with you guys. It's been such a privilege for us to work with you, so we will miss you. We have a lot of exciting work ahead of us, so we will continue to do our best just like you guys did. And I hope we can see each other again on the ground. We wish you a safe and soft landing.
Everyone on the ground says thank you to you all. Looking forward to a great next expedition.
Back here in Mission Control in Houston, you just saw a replay of yesterday's change of command ceremony aboard the International Space Station, where Alexey Ovchinin, the Roscosmos and Soyuz commander for today's departure of the Soyuz MS-26, handed over the keys of the kingdom to Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi, who now will be the commander of the station until his departure later this year. Again, the demarcation point of expeditions is marked between Soyuz undocking and Soyuz undocking. So Expedition 72 will come to a close, and Expedition 73 will begin about 3 hours and 37 minutes from now. Expedition 73 from left to right, Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, NASA's Johnny Kim, NASA's Nicole Ayers, Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Ryzhikov, NASA's Anne McClain, Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexey Zubritsky, and on the right is the new commander of the station, Takoya Onishi. While we stand by for the final farewells between the crew members and the closing of the hatch between the Rassvet module and the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, this is a live view inside the Quest airlock of the International Space Station. Nicole Ayers of NASA, along with Anne McClain earlier today, they have been working on maintenance and inspections of their two respective U.S. spacesuits, the extravehicular mobility units, that they will wear for a scheduled spacewalk outside the station on May 1st. That spacewalk will entail the construction of a mounting bracket for a future delivery of the next set of ISS rollout solar arrays that will be installed to augment the power supply on board the International Outpost. McClain and Ayers will also be moving a communications antenna to better improve and enhance communications for future visiting vehicles to the International Outpost. We will be conducting a briefing to preview that spacewalk this coming Thursday on NASA websites, beginning at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The spacewalk itself will be conducted on May 1st. This is a view from the balcony camera overlooking the Russian Mission Control Center on the outskirts of Moscow. Those flight controllers, again, in charge of all of the operations concerning the Soyuz vehicle itself. We should be getting shortly the green light from those flight controllers for the crew to gather inside the hatchway between the Rassvet module and the Soyuz MS-26, in which first they will say goodbye to one another. It's not exactly a formal ceremony with any planned remarks that are scheduled, but they will say farewell to one another, and then Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner will float inside the Soyuz vehicle. The hatch between Rassvet and Soyuz will be closed first, followed several minutes later by the hatch to the Soyuz itself. The crew then will begin to suit up in their Russian Sokol launch and entry suits and begin to conduct systems checks, leak checks, and communications checks that will lead to the actual undocking of the Soyuz about 3 hours and 35 minutes from now. While we have a few minutes, let me run down for you some of the key events and the times of upcoming activities. The undocking itself, the physical separation between Soyuz and the Rassvet module, is scheduled at 4:57 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time, 5:57 and 30 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. That will be followed 2.5 minutes later by an initial separation burn by the Soyuz, an 8-second burn of the Soyuz engine that will increase its opening rate from the station by about 0.5 meters per second. A minute and a half after that, there'll be a second separation burn of 15 seconds in duration that will occur at 5:01 and 50 seconds p.m. Central Time. That will be followed about 23 minutes later at or a couple of hours later, in fact, as the Soyuz has moved to a position well away from the International Space Station, some 41 kilometers away from the International Space Station. Sunrise at the landing site in Kazakhstan is scheduled at 7:24 p.m. Central Time, which will be 5:24 a.m. Kazakhstan time on April 20th. Just 3 minutes after that will be the deorbit burn. That will be about a 4-minute, 41-second retrograde maneuver to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed reentry back into the Earth's atmosphere. The deorbit burn is currently scheduled at 7:27 and 8 seconds p.m. Central Time, 8:27 and 8 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. Again, a 4-minute, 41-second retrograde maneuver. Once the deorbit burn is complete, about 23 minutes after that, there'll be the pyrotechnic separation of the 3 sections of the Soyuz vehicle. The only section that survives the heat of reentry is the descent module, the center section of the Soyuz spacecraft, in which the 3 crew members will be strapped into their seats. Alexey Ovchinin, as the Soyuz commander, will be in the center seat of the Soyuz, flanked to his left by Ivan Vagner as board engineer number 1. Don Pettit will be strapped into the seat to Ovchinin's right as board engineer number 2. Some 3 minutes after the module separation, the Soyuz vehicle and its 3 occupants will begin to reach the upper limits of the Earth's atmosphere at an altitude of about 400,000 feet. They will begin to experience the first sensation of Earth's gravity in 220 days as the heat around the Soyuz vehicle builds up to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Some 2 minutes after entry interface, as it is called, they will see a plasma buildup, a fireball around the spacecraft, if you will. This is normal. That will occur just before 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. That entry into the plasma regime could result in a blackout of communications, and in fact, the communications between the Soyuz and the Russian flight controllers and the Russian Mission Control Center is expected to be spotty as the Soyuz moves to a distance too far away from communications antennas on the International Space Station to provide meaningful communications. Once they exit that plasma regime, the maximum G loads on the crew of about 4 to 5 Gs will begin to be experienced at about 8:04 p.m. Central Time, 9:04 p.m. Eastern Time. At that point, communication should be restored between the Soyuz and the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft that will be flying a circular racetrack pattern around the vicinity of the landing site in Kazakhstan. A command to open up the parachutes will be sent at an altitude of some 10.7 kilometers, some 34,000 feet in altitude, at 8:06 and 18 seconds p.m. Central Time. The chute deployment sequence will first see a series of drogue chutes deployed that will pull out the main chutes, those familiar orange and white parachutes that will dramatically slow the descent rate for the Soyuz vehicle as it approaches the landing site. Landing is scheduled at 8:20 and 44 seconds p.m. Central Time, 9:20 and 44 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. 56 minutes after sunrise at the landing site, the expected landing coordinates should be around 47 degrees and 20 minutes north latitude and 69 degrees 35 minutes east longitude to bring the mission of Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner to an end after 220 days, 93.3 million statute miles. We should be just a few minutes away from the point at which the crew members will be gathering in that transfer area, that small passageway between the Rassvet module and the hatch to the Soyuz vehicle, in which they will say farewell to one another, after which Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner will float inside the Soyuz, and the Rassvet hatch will be closed first, followed a few minutes later by the hatch to Soyuz itself. The International Space Station is currently flying 262 miles above the Earth, moving from southwest and northeast in an inclination of 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator, about to fly directly over Jakarta, Indonesia. If you've just joined us, the International Space Station about to see the transition of one expedition to another. Expedition 72 just hours away from coming to a close at the point of physical separation of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft from the Rassvet module, at which point Expedition 73 will begin its formal tenure.
For now, and start closing the hatches. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Costa. We took one more time for the roads to sit down, and so we're getting ready. Okay, copy. We're eager to see you on screen. Give us a couple of minutes. Sounds good.
And as you can hear, that communication between the Russian flight controllers and the crew aboard the station, we're just a couple of minutes away from seeing the crew in the transfer tunnel area, if you will. It's not a tunnel itself. It's a passageway between Rassvet and the hatchway to Soyuz, where the crew members will gather briefly to say farewell to one another.
Go ahead and space to ground one. Konstantin, well, I want to say goodbye. I want to say thank you very much. We're going to see and hear you on the ground now. Alexey, I didn't recognize you. Well, I will see you again on the ground. You'll be rich. And we're going to look forward to seeing you on the ground. Have a soft landing. Okay. So do I understand correctly that we close the hatch first and Sergei will be closing hatch on their side next? No, incorrect. Sergei is the first to close the hatch on his side, and then you will be closing the hatch. You have hatch closure at 50 minutes. Okay, copy. Thank you for the clarification. Copy.
So there you heard firsthand the procedures that are about to unfold. Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner will say farewell to the other 7 crew members on board the International Space Station to complete this 11-day handover between Soyuz crews.
See you soon.
Sergei Ryzhikov, the recently arrived Roscosmos cosmonaut who flew to the station on Soyuz MS-27, along with Johnny Kim and Alexey Zabritsky, will be closing the hatch on the station side of the docking interface between Rassvet and Soyuz, after which the Soyuz hatch will be closed with Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner inside the returning vehicle, MS-26. And now a view of the hatchway.
We're seeing the video. Thank you.
And a view of Sergei Ryzhikov. Once those two hatches are closed, the three departing crew members, a quick view of Ivan Vagner. Once the three returning crew members are aboard Soyuz with the hatches closed, there'll be a leak check period to make sure that we have an airtight seal at that docking interface. That will be the precursor to the small vestibule between Rassvet and Soyuz being depressurized in advance of the command to begin opening up the hooks holding Soyuz and Rassvet in place. You see Don Pettit joining Vagner and Ovchinin, all three in those blue undergarments. And Ryzhikov and Ovchinin saying farewell to one another, and Don Pettit and Vagner to follow. Kirill Peskov in the white shirt. If that space appears to be tight, it sure is. There's barely enough room for all the crew members to fit in at any given time. Takoya Onishi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, the new station commander, saying farewell to the departing crew members. And Anne McLean. And Nicole Ayers. NASA's Johnny Kim saying farewell to the crew that he and Zabritsky and Ryzhikov just finished a handover with. Kim and his two Roscosmos crewmates launching back on April 8th from Baikonur on the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft. And with that, The Soyuz MS-26 crew moving into their spacecraft. The International Space Station just flying to the northeast of Manila. Once the three returning crew members have an opportunity to don their Sokol launch and entry suits, they will perform leak checks on those suits, and will also depressurize the upper section of the three-section Soyuz vehicle called the orbital module. Ryzhikov is wiping down the circumference of the hatchway to make sure there's no foreign object debris that would impinge on a good leak check to form an airtight seal at that docking interface.
Бурлаки ответит по Москвы.
Бурлаки, Moscow.
Сереж, скажи Леше, что...
Сергей.
Спасибо, Сереж. Бурлаки по Москве, как нас слышно.
Бурлаки, Moscow. How copy?
Принято. Есть.
Moscow. Бурлаки.
Слышно хорошо нас?
Alexey Nikolaevich, how do you read me?
Слева.
I have it loud and clear.
And with a final wave from Ryzhikov, the hatch to the Rassvet module now being closed and latched in place.
Emergency equipment to the station. Is that complete? Yes, this is complete.
We'll be standing by for word from the other side of the hatch that the Soyuz hatch has been closed
storage locations
to start the process of conducting leak checks at both sides of that docking interface.
It is panel 408 in MRAM-1. It will be there after hatch closure.
Панель 408, МИМ-1.
408 MRAM-1. The CTB with all of the items will be still there, and that will be after hatch closure. Copy.
Дим, работаем.
Dmitry, we are on page 29, item 3.2.
Пункт 3.2.
3.2, copy.
Она. Костя, можем выключать видео?
Go ahead and speak about one.
Вань, еще раз. То есть БВН, БЛП...
Закрыли КВД.
Все перенесли на станцию.
Сереж, отвечай во взгляде.
Go ahead, Sergey, on Space to Ground 1.
Transfer to the station.
Yes,
please ask.
Can we start the broadcast, or should we leave it as is?
He'll tell you where
Waiting for your hatch closure report. Do you confirm?
Ivan, please check if S4 and S6
MRM1 and Suzuka hatch is closed. Excavate is an electrical control.
Работаем по странице 29.
We are on page 29.
Excavate is in electrical control. I confirm. Okay, copy. Thank you. You can turn off and remove the camera, and you can Kyle 153 camera.
S4 is not illuminated. S6 is not illuminated. Good copy. The pressure equalization valve is closed. We're switching to page 32. Copy, Moscow. This is Bullaki 1. I'm ready to close the orbital module docking port hatch cover. Yes, your go for manual hatch cover closure. Copy. Closing it now.
Once again, if you've just joined us, you're looking there at a view from the station's external cameras
please make sure
of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft attached to the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station that is currently flying directly over Tokyo. Aboard the descent module, the center section of the three-section Soyuz, are NASA's Don Pettit, Alexey Ovchinin of Roscosmos, and their Roscosmos crewmate Ivan Vagner, having just said farewell to the other members of the station a few moments ago. The hatch on the Rassvet module has now been closed. We're standing by for word that the Soyuz hatch will have been closed. Once the Soyuz hatch is closed, the crew will begin the process of conducting leak checks and will begin to don their Russian Sokol launch and entry suits, performing leak checks on both sides of the docking interface to make sure we have an airtight seal before the vestibule between Rassvet and the Soyuz is depressurized. That will set the stage for the undocking of Soyuz. The physical separation scheduled at 4:57 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time.
This is Burlaki 1. BO orbital module docking port hatch is closed. Copy. BO SU hatch closed, and we're now on page 33. Copy. Page 33. Make sure you're broadcasting your actions.
Включаю ССВП.
SSVP docking and internal transfer system. I'm deactivating it now. Copy. SF7. DES7 command. 21:48:56. This is the time when I issued the DES7 command. Copy.
Так, выдаем С-15.
Sending S-15 command. Command sent at 21:49.
You're looking now at a view here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, Mission Control in Houston at the Johnson Space Center. Flight Control team that's on console right now, soon to begin a handover. The flight director who will be on console during undocking and landing later this evening is Marcos Flores at the bottom of your screen. To his right is Flight Director Heidi Brewer.
Indication is illuminated. Sending the 8 command. The 8 command send. S11 is not illuminated. The transfer hatch indication is not illuminated. Sending S16 command. S16 command sent. SSVP indication is illuminated. The 8 illuminated. Deactivated. SSVP, the docking and internal transfer system command sent. The indication is not illuminated, and I'm opening inaudible.
MCC Moscow,
Airflow regulator
one. Go ahead and speak to ground one.
Open, in work, opening.
Открыл ПВ-1.
Airflow regulator 1 is open.
Основной резервный на брусе.
And you are going to deactivate the main and backup power sources on this unit. Opening cabin oxygen supply valve. Open. It is open, inaudible.
Open. Подача 2 горит.
And the indication is illuminated. We're done with the actions on page 33, switching to page 5. Copy. You're going to start actions on page 3.5. PV valve.
Continuing to hear the procedures being read up to the departing Soyuz crew from the Russian flight controllers in Korolyov outside Moscow. In the center of your screen, the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft that will be undocking from the station about 3 hours and 5 minutes from now. On the left is the recently arrived Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft, docked to the Prishal module, also on the Earth-facing side of the station, which arrived on April 8th with NASA's Johnny Kim and Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov and Alexey Zabritsky.
And I'm now closing the SABO hatch.
Люк САБО закрыт. Транспарант
SABO hatch is closed. The indication is not illuminated. The descent module, the orbital module hatch is closed, and the BO orbital module pressure is 762.
Переходим на формат СКГС.
And I'm switching to the SKGS interface leak check system display.
The cosmonauts confirming that the hatch between the descent module, where the crew is currently located, and the upper section of the Soyuz, known as the orbital module, that hatch is now closed. The orbital module will be depressurized to vacuum.
Not illuminated. Sending T1 command starting the stopwatch. Ready. 3, 2, 1, go. S1 is sent, has been sent. Monitoring the docking port pressure dropping. SA, BO, and the station pressure stable.
Продолжается падение давления в стыковочном узле. Время.
Docking port pressure continues to drop. The time is 21:56:20. And the pressure is at,
This is Mission Control Houston. We now have confirmation of the closing of the Soyuz hatch on that side of the docking interface between the MS-26 spacecraft and the Rassvet module. The Soyuz hatch closing occurring at 1:52 p.m. Central Time, 2:52 p.m. Eastern Time. So both hatches on the docking interface on the Earth-facing side of the station now closed. And the Soyuz crew, the departing crew of Don Pettit of NASA and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexey Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner, will begin the process of donning their Sokol launch and entry suits and conducting leak checks. The upper section of the Soyuz, that's the bulbous section called the orbital module, that also has the docking probe that is attached to the Rassvet docking port, that is in the process of being depressurized as well. So the three departing crew members who will be coming home this evening for a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan early Sunday morning Kazakhstan time are now aboard their return vehicle, conducting final systems checks and leak checks prior to the undocking of the Soyuz about 3 hours from now at 4:57 p.m. Central Time. That'll wrap up our first broadcast of the day. We will be back on the air at 4:30 p.m. Central Time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with undocking coverage as Don Pettit, Alexey Ovchinin, and Ivan Vagner begin the journey home to wrap up a 7-month mission aboard the International Space Station. We'll see you back a little later this afternoon at 4:30 p.m. Central, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, this is Mission Control Houston.